The fastest hour in Montana radio continues. Call David right now at 1-866-627-5483.
And we're back 20 minutes until 10 o'clock. You know, I've told many people, here on the air, I've told people that comment that Bill Faber just made, the fastest hour on Montana radio. I credit you with that. You told me that one time, and I thought, he's probably right. It is pretty fast.
It is. It just disappears on us. Let's jump right into ethics because
let's do.
It bothers us as well. The good news is, if you study history, back in the old days when you didn't have 24-hour news, when you didn't have talk radio, these things happened. You just never heard about it. And people are getting caught now. That's the good thing. Now we need to make sure that they are punished as well. I sometimes jokingly say, and maybe it's not a joke, but we are reflective of society in Congress. There is no literacy test to run for office. You can run, David. I can run. Anybody can run. And anybody can be elected in America, and that's what makes us great. But as a result, we also get rich and poor, fat and skinny, old and young, men and women, every minority you can
moral
think of.
And immoral.
Moral and immoral.
Yeah.
We are reflective. And so when you've got 535 people back there, you're going to have some bad eggs, and we want them to go away as well. The situation with Jefferson and the money in the freezer, we find it as disgusting and shocking as anyone else, and it reflects poorly on the institution. And it's incumbent upon us to try and make people in America proud of the institution. Now, we have a tendency to dwell on the negatives, and so we don't look at the Sam Johnsons of the world, who's a congressman from Texas, who spent 7 years in the Hanoi Hilton, and when he bailed out of his airplane at the first year of the war in Vietnam, he broke his one shoulder and dislocated his other. When he got out 7 years later, his shoulder was still dislocated. This man is an American hero, and every time Jack Murtha gets up and talks about Iraq, Sam Johnson is always the one that follows and concludes for the Republican side of the aisle on the Iraq situation. Everybody knows who Jack Murtha is. Nobody knows who Sam Johnson is. And if you ever want to read a good book, it's called Captive Warrior. That man still serves in Congress. And he brings tears to your eyes when he talks about the fact that his family didn't even know he was alive for the first 4 years. And when he went back to the Hanoi Hilton a couple of years ago on a congressional Codell, and the people that were along on the trip said, could you give us a little tour of the Hanoi Hilton? He says, no, I can't. I can tell you just exactly what my 8x6 cell looks like because I spent 7 years in there, but I couldn't tell you the layout of the camp because I never got to see it. I was in that cell for 7 years. And those are the kinds of stories that America doesn't get a chance to hear because they dwell on the Jeffersons and the Duke Cunninghams and the Trafficants and such. And we dwell on them as well because we want to get rid of the bad apples. You don't send us to Congress to fix the things that are going right. You send us there to fix the things that are going wrong. And so we dwell on the problems as well.
You have a health ethics committee, though. What is their function, their role, and what could come out of that committee?
Virtually nothing, because it has to be bipartisan or it wouldn't work. If it was partisan, it would be used as a political tool, and so it's equally divided between the parties, and then both parties end up becoming very politicized within the rhetoric because they realize the points can be scored by making political statements, and it's very difficult. We hope that it works. Complaints are filed continually. And we do the best we can to let it see the light of day so the American public can essentially force Congress to act. And it shouldn't be that way, but again, it seems to be human nature. We want the bad apples kicked out of Congress. It's the same as with, none of us wanted Enron or Global Crossing or any of the rest of those things to occur. And the frustration is we feel that in many cases the violations of the laws that were broken could be enforced but aren't by the Justice Department. So we find frustration as well. We want those guys to go to prison. There ought to be zero tolerance. You steal somebody's retirement or you dummy up your end-of-the-year report to make your profits look better, you ought to go to prison for it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And we're continually trying to tighten up the laws to see that those people go away because they give business a bad name because essentially America is business. And when you get the bad apples, we dwell on that. It drives our markets and it hurts our country, and we ought not have that. And so there are many of us in Congress that feel the same way that the gentleman that called does, and that is let's prosecute and hold them to the same standard we hold everyone else to.
And you're right, too. Not enough attention is given to the positives. Right here in Montana, the gentleman that started this anti-meth project here in Montana.
Tom Siebel.
There's a businessman who gave of himself generously for the good of the state.
Well, not just his money, but his time, and he isn't just a supporter, he's an advocate. And so, the $12 million that he's contributed to this is phenomenal. Yeah. But so is all of the effort that he's given, because he said, I'm going to take this on as a project. And too many of our movie stars and such, they've got a lot of money, so they invest in causes, but they don't invest personal time and effort. Mm-hmm. And Tom Siebel is one of those that he lives and breathes this issue. It matters to him deeply. In fact, he drives you crazy. Because he's got me on his speed dial. I must be one of his fave or whatever you call that, because he's calling continually. But he holds your feet to the fire, and he makes you care about that issue as much as he does. And good for him. He backs up his money with his time.
Well, I just mentioned him because he's on the other side of the fence there from Tyco and Ron and the rest of these people that are just doing it for their own gratification. Let's get another phone call in here. Pat is calling from Glendive. Pat, you're on the air.
I think one thing in the healthcare system that's causing a lot of the high prices is the malpractice insurance mess. A lot of doctors are just being run out of business because of it, and we have to pay then.
Yep, absolutely, and especially obstetrics. The baby doctors will tell you, especially when the courts have made a determination, they call it a tail. The baby is born. 20 years later, something shows up. They go back 20 years and say, well, this was somehow as a result of the delivery process or some of the prenatal care. And any of you that know OBGYNs, they literally live in fear, because one can, and it isn't just the financial aspect of the lawsuit and the medical malpractice. Imagine being drugged through the court system. All you want to do is be a doctor, and you spend your time giving depositions and answering lawyers and sitting before a jury and worrying whether your lifelong dream of being a doctor and helping people is going to end because of the one case. And there's a lot of different aspects to the cost of health care, and we're trying to address them, but it really doesn't serve any purpose to just throw up our hands and say we need a government-run system.
Well, John Edwards didn't do us any favor, did he?
No, he didn't.
Taking tens of millions of dollars in each case for, I would call them trivial. Obviously, the jury didn't, but nevertheless, it just seemed like he knew where the deep pockets were, and that's what he went after.
Well, the other side of the issue
cost us
is
money.
We never want to limit a person's ability to have recourse through the courts. That is what also made America great. As I travel around the world, and I've been into Iraq, and I've been to places because I'm on the Foreign Ops Committee. I've been into Uganda, Sudan, up to Darfur, the Congo, and in these emerging countries around the world, they talk about how great America it is, and America is the number one country, but nobody ever wants to copy our government. And the reason our government works is we have an independent executive, legislative, and judicial. And I've noticed where some of these countries get off whack is that they don't separate their judiciary from their executive. So you got a president or a prime minister who controls the judges. That's a bad thing. You don't want that, and I think it is destined to fail if you do that, because the president always wants to make sure that he's got the judiciary in his pocket in case he does something wrong. What makes America great is that we have an independent judiciary, and so we always want to have the ability to say, you're wrong as a government. We want to go to the court and have the ability to get some recourse.
We got to take a break right here. When we come back, we've got a couple of people waiting on the line very patiently, and I ask you to just stay where you are, if you would, for about 2 minutes, and we'll be right back with Congressman Denny Rehberg.